Hello and welcome back to the Fight and Talk 2 podcast with myself, Mr. Fight and Talk, aka Connor, joined as always by the fantastic co-hosts of the show, George and Prath. Thank you very much for joining me, both of you, as always. We are joined by a very special guest this week. He's been hitting us up in the DMs for a while. We've got to get him on the show just to let everyone know about Joe's love for MMA and his knowledge as well. This kid is very, very knowledgeable. If you don't follow him on social media, give him a check out. He's going to shout himself out in a second anyway. But how are we doing, Joe? All good, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on your channel and giving me the platform to talk about MMA, because I'm not able to do that with my friends, so we don't like the sport. So it's good to talk to people about the sport I love.
That's it, man. That's literally it. You know, when I put a tweet out before Christmas and said, I want to do a podcast, does anyone want to do it? You know, me and George have never met each other in person, you know, and George hit me up in the DMs and said, yeah, I want to do it. And then me and Prath went to school together. And it was only by a strange coincidence that we all kind of put this stuff together. And it's so lovely to have people in the MMA community that want to come on the show and want to talk about what we all love and what we all, you know, enjoy speaking about. Because the MMA community, although it may seem very vast on social media, not a lot of us have a lot of friends that like to speak about MMA. You know, I think that's very evident. But we'll get straight into the fights anyway. You know, George was asleep for the prelims because he's a casual. So me, Prath, and Joe are going to be discussing the prelims. So obviously we had.
Hang on a second. Casual. Ease up, mate. Carry on, but carry on.
So obviously we had a few decisions early on, and it wasn't. We had a very good start to the fights with was it Osborne? Prath, you're going to tell me. Osborne had a
Ode Osborne with a fantastic KO, punches in the first round, 26 seconds in. Man, like, what else can you really say? I didn't think he really kind of gave himself enough time to really show everything that he has, but 26 seconds to knock someone out, beautiful. I believe it was if I can remember correctly, it was a straight right. There was another one.
He caught the overhead kick on the shoulder, came straight down the pipe with the left shot, wasn't it? And just put him straight out.
Was a left. Yeah. But amazing performance, featherweight as well. Really, really tough weight class. So let's see him progress up these rankings and see where he goes, man. But I think if you can, even if you're on the first fight of the card or you're the main event of the prelims, if you can have a knockout in 26 seconds, that's really going to open some eyes. So I think he really, even though you know you're normally thrust into the curtain, was it the opener?
Curtain jerker.
Not really someone curtain jerker. That's the phrase I was looking for. Normally in the curtain jerker phase, if you don't really have any notoriety at all. So to have this now, that'll push him further up the card. Let's see him in like a main event prelim or starting off the main card or something like that, and make some stars out here.
Absolutely, man. And it's been so evident over the past couple of years as well. The guys that were on the prelims, and we say this all the time, you know, the guys that were on the prelims, the girls that were on the prelims, they will be in a main event. If they make enough noise on the prelims, they will be main event in 6 months to a year. You know, we see it with so many people that they're fighting on the first or second card of the prelims, and then all of a sudden they're in the main event against some big names and stuff. You know, and then the first fight on the kind of prelim section, obviously that was the early prelims. We had the Valiev versus Day fight, which was a complete WrestleMania from Valiev. Joe, what did you see, man? Obviously, it was a very dominant performance from him, but what did you get from that? Do you think he's a star of the future?
Yeah, I think he's very good. I think we saw against Trevian Jones, he looked very good in that first round. He almost had that fight finished. Chris Taglioni obviously let it go on, and then he ended up getting stopped, which is now no contest, which is lucky for him because he's still got his 7-fight unbeaten streak. That's very good for you to be able to promote with going into the future. And I feel like this fight was just him thinking, well, I don't really want to get into a war with Martin Day, because we saw him get into a very good fight with Davey Grant last year, which was quite a very fun fight. And he thought, well, I'm a wrestler, I can wrestle, I can just dominate this guy. The UFC knew 100% what they were doing. Like Martin Day's 8-5 against a guy who's 16-2. This was a great comeback win for him, and I think he's trains with Frankie Edgar as well, and Khabib Nurmagomedov, so he trains with all these great guys. I feel like he will get in the top 15 within two or three fights. I feel if they match him correctly.
Absolutely, man. Fantastic knowledge. See, look, I bet you haven't even got a script in front of you. You just know this stuff. It's in your head. I can see it in your eyes, man. But no, absolutely. I completely agree with you, man. Completely agree with you. But the only issue I have with the people that are very wrestle dominant is that they can get found out when they move into the top 10 because you have fighters that are more well-rounded. You know, we see a lot of people that come in with just a wrestling background and they rely solely on that. As soon as they break into the top 10, top 8, 7 maybe, they get found out by someone that's a lot more well-rounded. But it will be very exciting to see his career and how he progresses over the next couple of fights. The next one we had was the Zalal fight, which against Sung Woo Choi. Prath, what did you see, man? Because Zalal thought he won, but I thought it was a very, very good performance by Choi.
Yeah, very, very back and forth fight. Really, the tides of this one really, really kind of went back and forth. You normally see one person kind of take over at certain periods of the fight, but this was definitely a bit of a back and forth here. Yeah, Song Woo did a great job of being in control, kind of dominating that kind of space up against the cage as well, and doing really, really good in the clinch as well. Some great groundwork as well. That's the other thing that's quite notable. When you see someone kind of use all the facilities of their game and implement it and show, I think that's something that's really scary for the next person that's going to come along to see that this person has such a complete game. So I'm actually really high on him. I think he's really, really good. I think he's going to be someone that's going to be a problem. Maybe, I think with a couple of fights, a little bit more experience, I think he clearly looks like a strong, very explosive gentleman as well. So sky's the limit for people like that, man. It just really depends on the favorable matchups, as Joseph kind of mentioned, Joe just mentioned. I think the matchups really, really make a difference there. And so let's see where they match them up. And I'm hoping that, I'm just looking Timur Valiev and Ode Osborne. They'll probably do quite well together and maybe move that on to another one as well. But, you could throw Choi in there as well. I think that those three right there could be matched up against each other. And that could be a great little end of the prelims fight, start of the main card fight, and it'll be fireworks.
Yeah, definitely, man. But what I thought was strange was Zalal was kind of taunting and acting a bit like he'd already won the fight, and he was kind of a bit overconfident throughout, whereas Choi kind of stuck to his game plan. He was putting the work in, he was grinding it out, he was doing what he had to do, exactly like you say, man. He was using every tool in his arsenal to win the fight, and he did enough to win the fight. But I felt like Zalal went in there with quite a lot of hype around him, and he just didn't really perform. We'll get into some other people that didn't perform on the card as well, but I just thought it was a very, very, very good performance from him as well, man. Very good. Joe, what was your take on it, man? Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say quickly before Joe jumps in here is just the famous words of Mr. Burt Watson is don't leave it to the hands of the judges if you're going to be annoyed like that. And I think any of those guys that are in those close fights, when they come out and they're annoyed and frustrated with how the performance went, and it's like, okay, well, you lost the decision. It was a close fight. It was either going to go one way or the other, depending on who saw it. And I think, they get the reaffirmation in the corner before they come out for the third round. Okay, yeah, you're 2 up or 1 up. Maybe his coach believed he saw something that maybe the other guys didn't. But I got to agree with you. I thought Choi kind of took that quite easily. Not easily, but
he did enough. Decisive. He definitely did enough throughout the whole fight. Yeah, definitely, man, definitely. Joe, kid with the knowledge, tell me, what did you see, bud?
I was quite disappointed in Zalal because I think I had Zalal winning by TKO round 3 because I was very impressed with him in his first year because this is a guy who came in at 23 years old. I think you already had 2 losses by the end of the UFC, but you lose at a very young age. I feel like if you lose at the very start of your career, you have more of a better chance of succeeding. Those losses only make you better. And I just feel like he's fighting too often for him to make those improvements he needs to do. So, but Sung Woo Choi, if you look at his record, he's lost to guys like Gavin Tucker and Movsar Evloev, and then two of the biggest prospects in the featherweight division right now. So, and one of them's fighting Cub Swanson. So I feel like he's fought the better opposition. I felt like he had a great performance, and he's a Muay Thai bronze medalist as well. So I feel like even though he's 1 and 2 going into this fight, I feel like people kind of overlooked it like me. But when you look at who he's fought, I think it's not that big as an upset.
No, definitely, man. Definitely. He really did put on the works there, and it was good to see as well. And I think he will definitely be a star in the future. There's a lot of people coming out of the that corner of the world as well that we are seeing really, really come through and make a lot of noise, especially over the past 2 or 3 years. And I think over the next 2 or 3 years, I saw something on social media. It's either going to be a kind of Asian fighter or a Russian Dagestani fighter that's going to be the champion over the next couple of years. I think all the Americans are going to be losing the belts, you know. Prath, you are muted, my friend. You are muted.
Ha! I am muted. Sorry, I was going to say, look at what the Korean Zombie has done for that region. Hey, it's never going to be as bad as George's fancy mishap. So, that just look at that region. Like, look at Korean Zombie, Zhang Wei Li. Like, these are all people that are really opening up these regions. And before, for me, I only really felt like the guys that were really prevalent and in a big way were Takeya Mizugaki, Takanori Gomi. These were all Japanese fighters. And so the Chinese guys and the Korean guys are starting to get in there, and they're monsters, man. Look at Du Ho Choi. Don't know where he's gone, but before the Cub Swordsman fight, he was a killer. He was a monster. He was one of the more feared guys in that division. So, I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
Just also, I think Africa's coming as well, I reckon. You know, you've got Izzy already, obviously Nigeria, New Zealand, and Ngannou potentially going to win a belt pretty soon. You know, guys like Sadiq Youssef coming up through the ranks in certain divisions. Like, Africa's going to produce a few UFC champions, definitely.
Yeah, and I think it's also the world is now getting involved as well. We're seeing so many fighters from these tiny little regions of places. You know, the Kazakhstans, the Uzbekistans, these kind of places that you wouldn't really piece together with, you know, professional fighters and stuff, but all of a sudden you have these big fighters coming through. The Cyril Gans from France, and obviously you don't really kind of pitch them as fighters. Obviously, on the previous episode that myself and George did, we had Norbert Nyovenyi on, and he's Hungarian. There are not a lot of Hungarian fighters out there on the big stage, you know. But I think the whole world is now getting involved with mixed martial arts. And that leads us on to a UK favourite, obviously Meatball Molly. Prath, you had on the pre-fight, you had her to win this fight, obviously, but her game plan didn't get implemented throughout the fight, and she obviously took an L here. But you know, how did you see the fight, man?
Ah, man, meatball. It was tough to watch, man. I always really want them to do well. I know there's always the possibility of losing or getting decisioned and things like this, but I did really give her a good chance against Carol. Was it Carol Rosa? Oh my god, I completely forgot her name. Laura Procopio. Laura Procopio. I knew I had a trouble with the actual name before.
The Hosa fight is after.
Laura. But do you know what? Laura came out and she did what she needed to do. She dominated her on the ground. She didn't really give her a chance to really implement anything at all. We were talking beforehand about how Molly really wanted to make her jiu-jitsu coach proud. I think, unfortunately, looking at a performance like that, she's definitely going to need to do more work. There was obviously a big, I wouldn't say controversy, but she dropped her gloves in the octagon after the fight was done as well, indicating usually that someone's going to retire. She did reiterate after the fight that it was kind of in memory of her father, and she wanted to leave it in there as though kind of like his last fight. And I thought that was very beautiful. That was very beautifully done. But she's got some work to do here, man. She's got some real work to do. I would like to see her. I know she's out of Liverpool, but I don't know if she trains with Till's crew. Maybe that's something that she can maybe try and change it up, mix it up, add some different people to her team. Look at the other places within the UK as well. We've got Nottingham, we've got Dan Hardy. I know Dan Hardy and Jim Moorhead also have a facility where they're training people as well. Like, I think it might be good for her. You know, she's had a couple of wins and losses. So let's see if we can do something to really kind of solidify herself as someone that's going to really keep on track here.
Yeah, definitely. She obviously had that. She was in on the armbar, if my memory serves me as well. She was very, very deep on the armbar, but she slipped the arm out, and then it was like she almost didn't know what to do when she had the arm. You know, obviously you put the thumb up, try and pull it over under the armpit, but it just seemed, you know, she wasn't extending her hips either. I kind of felt like she, you know, and that's just. I've only done a couple of jiu-jitsu sessions, you know, and that's one of the first things you kind of get taught. But obviously having a high pressure environment, you know, she knows what she's doing. I'm not taking that away from her, but I feel like in that time, you know, she could have implemented that armbar a little bit more. Prath, you know a bit more about jiu-jitsu than I do, but what did you see on her?
Yeah, I think Lara defended it very, very well. And I think that's the more important thing to look at, as opposed to Molly's maybe mistakes there. I thought she was able to kind of stack her up against the cage and then kind of get to a position where she was a little bit more, she had like one knee on the ground, one leg up, but still in kind of like a seated position. So I feel like when she got to that position, she was able to kind of adjust the elbow and then kind of slowly get herself out of there. And you know, Lara's Brazilian. I mean, I'm going to just assume, like I guess most people will assume, that she's probably quite highly ranked in jiu-jitsu. Maybe I'm a little bit ignorant for that, but I'm assuming she's got a pretty decent jiu-jitsu game at this point. So escaping the armbar, as well as being taught first, is kind of one of the first things you get taught to do as well, which is to defend the arm bars, how to get to that position where you're a little bit more safe, because it's one of those ones like the rear naked choke. Once it's sunk in, you're gonzo. There's going to be very, very little that you can do to get out of there. You know, peeling back the hands when you're in the rear naked choke sometimes does well, but for the most part, they get submitted. Same with the armbar. Once they've got to that kind of spiderweb position where the legs are entangled over the arm, and they've got that close grip, and they got that wrist right here in their grip, it's usually gonzo, man. So for her to kind of, I wouldn't say let that slip, but then allow Lara to get to a better position and then escape, was definitely a mistake. But these are the things that you kind of learn from positionally. I think having the feeling in there as well, like, I don't know how many times she's been in that position. I'm going to assume she's been in this position quite a lot. I think it goes different from fighter to fighter as well. So you could drill the armbar a million times, but you could go up against someone that just has the perfect defense for the armbar. And I think this was definitely one of those cases.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, man. I completely agree. It was a good fight. It was
yeah,
an interesting enough fight. You know, obviously women's MMA, as we spoke about last time, has been slandered a little bit over the past couple of weeks and the past couple of years, for instance, you know, and I think fights like that and fights like the next one that Joe's going to break down, the Edwards versus Hoser fight, they are good fights. You know, these girls are really, really turning up, and they are putting on shows. Do you know what I mean? They're really putting the work in, and they're grinding it out as well. And I don't think they should be slept on at all. But Joe, you're going to talk us through about the Edwards Hoser fight. And obviously Edwards she only fought a couple of weeks ago, so she's straight back in, and that was her debut. Hoser's obviously a very big challenge as well, but you're going to let us into some knowledge that you've got, man.
Yeah, I really think this was a good fight. I feel like the bantamweight division needs a lot of talent. We've seen quite a lot of prospects at the moment lose, like Agapova and Avia, them two are meant to be like the biggest prospects coming. And then you've got Carol Hoser coming through and Jocelyn Edwards. Edwards did quite well on such short notice. You could tell Hoser definitely didn't want to scrap on the feet with her, like she's been known for in the past, because her volume of punches is incredible. She'll throw 100 punches, like over 100 strikes per fight. I think she's done in the first two fights, maybe a bit less. But here she knew the danger that Edwards possessed, and she just dominated on the ground for like 4 minutes. And then in the first round or second round, I think it was, Edwards got up and she stung Hoser quite badly a few times. And I felt like, because I picked Edwards to win, so every time she took it down, I was like, that's not the fight I really wanted to see. But she looked very good. And that loss for Edwards isn't too damaging at all. Yes, she took a bit of damage on, but she busted Hoser's nose quite badly. We saw her spit blood out of her nose, which was quite gruesome. But I feel like she will come back, maybe a step down competition a bit, maybe not push her up, maybe her be the prospect, then have an opponent for her rather than her being the opponent for Hoser. But they're both very good talents in that division, and they'll 100% be in more fights. And we could see a rematch down the line. They're only 24 and 25 years old, so very good for the bantamweight division, and it's much needed talent.
Definitely. And obviously it bloodied up the octagon as well, which is always nice. It's always nice to see that mat floor getting a little bit of blood on it. And I believe she was bleeding out the nose, but she was also bleeding out of a small cut out of her mouth as well. I think she was clipped on one of the end of Edwards' punches that really kind of rocked her and obviously maybe moved her mouth guard out of the way, and she was bleeding quite substantially out of her mouth, and obviously making it very, very clear to the audience that she was spitting a lot of blood out. But exactly as you say, man, both of these ladies are still very, very young in their careers. It was a very, very good fight, and obviously Edwards taking on short notice as well. I thought it was very, very good. And obviously that came, we had a few fights that obviously went to decision and was kind of, slow grinding fights. But then the next one was a very strange turn of events. It reminded me of the Matt Matrones, the Cowboy Cerrone kind of finishes to a fight, which was the Devontae Smith versus James fight. George, were you up for this one?
Just about.
Just about. All right, so we'll let Prath do it then. Obviously, Devontae Smith is a
I do remember the geezer's eye, and Christ, I do remember the geezer's eye, and Christ Almighty, that was bad. Oh,
it was very, very bad.
It was a water balloon in his eye, wasn't it? It looked terrible.
Yeah, me and Prath were talking during the fight as well, and Devontae Smith was really, really strong throughout that whole fight. His takedowns and literally just throwing the dude on the floor, which was absolutely crazy to see. You could see he was definitely the stronger guy going in there, both with the hands and with the wrestling techniques as well that he was throwing up. But tell me, Prath, man, what happened to this guy's eye?
Oh, well, before we talk about that, I definitely want to talk about the lat drop he did, because I obviously big into my jiu-jitsu, big into my wrestling. Wow, like you could tell he's just an incredibly explosive athlete, and for him to pull off that takedown that he ended up getting him, which ended up leading to the end of the fight. Wow. And I think DC did a really good explanation of it. But he essentially just kind of dropped his body weight and swept behind him and just kind of pulled him straight to the ground and like landed in side control, and just kind of from there was able to just pepper him up, hit him with shots over and over again. Once they finally got to the feet, I think it was like not even 1 second while they were on the feet before Keith Peterson stopped it. I think he immediately saw that damage there. And I think Justin also knew that the fight was about to get finished here, because he probably couldn't see out of that eye. Man, what can you say, man? Devontae Smith, he was a massive rising star. I think he only took that one loss to Karma Worthy. I believe that was in his last fight. But apart from that, he's been putting on great performances. He had a great TKO win, I believe the Karma Worthy fight was maybe a second fight, and the first one he had a spectacular TKO win as well. So again, another guy that sky's the limit for. I'll be interested to see who they match him up. The other interesting thing about this fight is that it was a catch weight of 160 pounds. Mm-hmm. Now, was that because of Devontae Smith or was that because of Justin James? When I look at the weight, it was 159.5 for Devontae Smith. So I'm going to just assume that he was the one that was struggling to make the weight. So interesting to see where he lands. Does he land at 55? Can he cut that extra 5? I know that's where a lot of the guys really struggle, is in those last 5 pounds. Cowboy Cerrone has synonymously said that, like, he doesn't mind 160. When he gets to those last 5 pounds, it's absolute agony. And I can completely see that when you look at someone like Devontae Smith, who's bodied, and you can tell he has got very, very little fat on him. So I can imagine he has a really, really tough time cutting, but I think also his frame might not lead him to be so successful at welterweight as well. So let's see where he lands up. Let's see if he can potentially make a decision on what way he wants to go and then go forward, because I think he's got a bright future as well. He's another one of those guys that you could definitely see in the top 15 in the next year or two, maybe Absolutely. Within the next year.
Yeah, and it was almost like, James just needed Mickey to be in his corner, just to get the old razor blade under the eye, pop it for him, and then he could have carried on, the old, the Rocky, give him the Rocky stance, he could have gone out there and finished it. Who knows?
Oh, man. It was gruesome though. I think anything like that is gruesome when you see, it always just makes me reminds me of Leslie Smith. I can't remember who Leslie Smith fought, but she had she got her ear exploded. And it just always reminds me of whenever I see gruesome stuff like that. It's kind of ugh.
Yeah, and obviously for the fans as well. When we saw Joanna last year, when obviously she had the balloon forehead. When we see fighters, the Overeem when he busted his lip, and stuff like that, everyone just kind of bounces back.
And
wow!
Don't forget Brahim with like the ear when his ear ripped off. Pretty much.
Yeah.
Oh my god! Jesus Christ! Oh, don't worry. I'll just put it back on.
Yeah, duct tape, it'll be fine.
It didn't quite work, did it?
So, Joe, what do you see in Smith's future? Obviously, he had a very, very dominant performance out there, but where do you see him going next, man?
I think he has all the assets to be a very good lightweight. He's obviously got the range, he's got the skill, and he's shown that he's got the wrestling as well. That takedown was very impressive. And Justin James was a guy, obviously, who came into the UFC, destroyed Frank Camacho within seconds, and everyone had this high hopes for him. And then, unfortunately, lost to Kevin Tucker after that. But it's still a good win, especially having a long some time out after that Commonwealth he lost. I think he can do very well. Obviously, he made his debut also against Donhill Ma, which was very good. The win, very quick. I think it was body shot KO. I'm not too sure on that, but it was a very impressive performance. I feel like, though, the lightweight division is just so stacked. It's so hard to say whether he's going to be a top 15 because you have to match him up against like Armin, the Fizievs, the Brad Riddles. Like, he could compete with them, but I'm not too sure whether he could win. I think he would have a better chance at welterweight, where that's still quite stacked, but I don't feel like it's as stacked as the lightweight division. But at lightweight, I think he could be finished top 20, top 25 guy. I'm not too sure if he could go into the ranking. So,
no,
I think
Wow.
I think when you consider like guys like Fiziev aren't even ranked yet, then this guy's got a bit of work to do still. But you know, there's every chance. But like Joe said, maybe welterweight is better for him potentially.
Yeah, or even this catchweight, even a catchweight of, you know, if there was a new rank, if there was a new set of weight class, maybe a 162.5 or something around that kind of mark, it would just free up so much space.
We don't need to become boxing, man. Like seriously, all of these weight categories. Oh, honestly, that drives me insane. Do you
165 all day.
Oh, it's like, what is going on with boxing? It's like there's like 55 different weight categories in boxing. Let's just stick to this. It's simple. It's simple for me to understand. So let's just stick with this.
You're a simple man and you like simple fights, yeah?
Don't
Simple is a good one.
I've got a 162.5 today. Oh, why?
What's your take on that, Joe? Do you think that they should implement another weight class?
I think they could implement two, obviously one for the female and one for the male. I think 165 should be needed for the males. I feel like guys like Kevin Lee, Colby Covington, and all these other big guys who maybe, because a 15 or 20 pound gap weight is too much. I feel like 15 it is. Gap weight is too much from 150 to 70. Like, there's no in between there. I think that's the only way I can want another division. And obviously the women atomweight, I feel like, is a good division to bring in the women atomweight. Like, there's so many good talented fighters in one FC, which is like the top Asian promotion in the world, that have so many good fighters from that region who are too small. Like girls like Loma Lookbonmi, they're kind of quite small. Jinyu Fry, they're quite small for strawweight. So I think those two other divisions where it would be best suited.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I completely agree with you. And I've said a very similar thing about the heavyweights as well. Because sometimes you've got these heavyweights that are they're cutting at 265 and you think, come on, man. You know, there's some guys that look like absolute monsters at 265 and they've got abs and stuff like that. The Eddie Halls and the Thorpe Johnson or whatever his name is, you know what I mean? And they're like 300 pound, 400 pound. But I think there should be a division between 240 and 265 as well, for me personally. Because you could be in the heavyweight division walking at 225 and you're facing someone that's 265. That's a massive difference, and there's going to be a massive difference in the power, the takedowns, the takedown defense, and all kinds of stuff as well. So exactly as you say, Joe, man, and what you said, Prath, I think just a couple more divisions in those crucial points where you could see a lot of talent in those divisions. I think that would be very, very good for the UFC to do.
Look at all the guys who went from 155 to 170. Masvidal, Cowboy, Connor. Like, these are all guys that could fit well within those two different weight categories, and you could have some great title fights there. You could have, you know, people jumping to make three division champions. I think generally it just allows you to have more belts, and I think in a time where we're really I mean the UFC is really starving for stars, and they need, we're both together, obviously. I feel like just having more people to be able to put on pay-per-view and market them as a champion, I think is very important, especially now when you don't have a Conor McGregor regularly holding up your company, or a GSP or a John Jones who are fighting regularly. I think it's very important for more options for everyone, right?
Absolutely. I completely agree, man. I completely agree. Obviously, that takes us up to the main card, which had a few good fights on it. It had a few not so good fights on it, which we'll get to. But obviously, the first fight on the card was the Dariush Ferreira fight. George, were you up for this one? Did you see the absolute dominance by Dariush?
Yeah, I was here. Don't worry. Yeah, step aside, hardcores. Here comes the casual.
What did you see, man? Because obviously Dariush, I thought Dariush had a very, very dominant performance, but I believe it was a split decision win, which, you know, as Prath said earlier, do not leave it to the judges. You know, I felt like he did very, very well throughout the fight, and it should have been a 29-28 or I think it was 29-28 across the board, and obviously someone had it going the other way, which was very surprising. And it wasn't Chris Lee, which was also very surprising because he is synonymous with terrible decisions. But George, what did you see during that fight? It was a fantastic performance by Dariush, right?
Yeah, Dariush was great. I didn't realize, I must have missed it, but I didn't realize it was split decision until when I was reading this morning, and I was like, what? Like he definitely won. Like you said, 29-28. I thought he completely, like, he's like water, Dariush, isn't he? He's just got this beautiful kind of movement to him, and I just he's actually just, on top of being a nice guy, he's just a pleasure to watch fight. I just find it to be, when you see Dariush on the card, it's like, oh, good, this is going to be it, man. This is a nice fight. You're going to get a beautiful performance every time. And after his performance as well, he's like, look, come on, I'm a top 5 guy now. And to be fair, you wouldn't hate on the fact that he should get a top 5 guy. I think, did you put a message out, Connor, about that on Twitter, about like who he should fight next?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, obviously, if no one follows us on Twitter, it's at Fighting Talk 2. But I did. I said either Hooker, Felder, or RDA. But I believe RDA and Dariush are training partners, so I doubt they would fight each other. But I think that there's a couple of guys in the division that he can definitely move up to fight.
Well, like I said, it was a fantastic performance. He completely deserved to win it. And I think now, he said that he's got a baby coming in June, so he wants to fight one more time before June and then have a bit of a break and then maybe come back at the end of the year. So I say just slap him with Tony Ferguson and get on with it.
Oh.
Yeah, why not, man? Why not? Joe, how did you have it going? Who have you got next for Dariush, Joe?
Ferguson, mate.
I think Islam Makhachev would be a very good fight, but obviously fighting Drew Dober next. But I just think that Makhachev might, if he wants to fight in June, that fight might not happen. But maybe Tony Ferguson. But whether Tony Ferguson is Dariush that much as an appealing name, that's the kind of the issue here. But I thought he won 30-27, and I don't really see how they scored the fight 2-1 to Diego Ferreira. But it's interesting how you said they got rid of Chris. I forgot what he said his last name was now, but Chris Lee. But they did have Adeline Bird, who's equally as bad as, or even worse than Chris Lee. But I thought Dariush had a very good performance, and I think he should get a top 6 or top 5 guy next.
And it's such a stacked division as well. You know, it's who do you put him against? Because there's so many people coming off of fights, booking fights, wanting to have rematches and stuff like that. And I really feel sorry for these guys that are in that kind of like 8 to 15 rankings, because who do they fight? It's just such a stacked, tightly packed division as well, you know. And as we mentioned earlier, there's some absolute killers sitting on the outside of the rankings, obviously at the kind of like 17, 18 mark as well, kind of even the 15 to 20 mark. These guys are really, really coming in, and it's kind of like over the next coming years, it will be kind of a changing of the guard, seeing that top 7, top 8 probably start to move to lower down the rankings and then have this big transformation of the ranking system as well. But Prath, obviously, before we did the pre-fight, obviously, George was talking about someone that he fancied quite a lot, and it was Manil Kape, right? And then we were all hyped on Manil Kape from what George was saying and how this guy was going to come in. He was going to make loads of noise, and it was all going to be fireworks, and everything was going to be super amazing. This guy's going to put on such a dominant performance. And then it was just completely flatlined, and I tried not to nap during that fight. Prath, what happened to Kape? Obviously, Pantoja put on a fantastic performance. We cannot take anything away from him. But where was Kape? For me, he didn't show up. But what did you see?
Yeah, that's pretty much sums it up. I don't think he showed up to have a performance against. I think he was waiting all night for a shot that he was maybe waiting. He maybe saw in the arsenal of Pantoja that he was waiting for a particular shot, but it just seemed like he was sitting there just kind of admiring what Pantoja was doing to him, which is normally weird because it's normally the guy that does the shot that admires that does the shot and goes, "Oh, that looked really good," and takes their time. But it was actually kind of felt like the other way around. Very bizarre performance, very, very bizarre performance. And I'm not going to lie, I also had a huge hope for Manel K. Maybe not in the same way that George does. I'm sorry, dude, but
I didn't like beat him up that much, did I? I didn't pick him up that heavily.
Yeah, you did. You really did. You really did. You really did.
Carry on.
And you know what? I felt the same way though. I felt the same way. He comes out of a very strong, and you know, not to knock him in any way, but he's coming from Ryzen, which has a very, very strong bantamweight and flyweight division, and you've got people like Kyoji Horiguchi and Oka Sasaki out there. So I did believe he was legit. I didn't think in any way that he would be able to struggle as much as he did. Seemed like he wasn't able to find the distance he wanted. Pantoja did a phenomenal job as well. Like let's give it up for the cannibal, man. Like he is one of those guys that will never ever get the credit he deserves, but he is definitely like top three in that division, undoubtedly. And I think you're going to kind of see him, Figgy, and Brandon Moreno kind of like alternate between each other as those top guys. Wow.
Yeah.
George,
and,
please.
And the other guy I was friends that Askarov is a potential champion in that division. Potential.
Yeah, Askarov. Yeah, definitely, dude. I agree. But
Manuel Cap, man. Oh man. After I shed my tears, I booked a one-way ticket back to Tokyo for him, and perhaps the hype train didn't quite get out the station, did it? So yeah, no, not the best. But what I will say about Manel Cap is that when you're booked to be a backup for a title fight, and then you get given a top 5 guy in your debut, that there's obviously something there for Manel Cap, but he needs to go away, get more time in the UFC, which, you know, is the biggest mixed martial art organization in the world. Like it might take a bit of time to like settle in, shall we say. I don't really think that this affects him too badly, you know. I still think that he'll find himself in the rankings come Tuesday. I still think he'll find himself with some decent fights this year. But yeah, he never really got going, did he?
when he did land though, he was hitting him with like a piston of a right hand, like literally quick as hell. It seemed like he had everything there, but just didn't pull the trigger. UFC jitters, like there's so many different things that could have happened there. Maybe he had something happen on the walkout maybe when he was warming up, something happened, an injury or something like that, man. There's so many different things that can contribute to your in cage performance. Yeah,
and I said this like before on the preview one as well. I said like he's you know, for a flyweight, he hits like a freight train. He's seen that in Rise and he hits hard. And you know, like when people like come out and like they just don't perform like how you expect them to. Like whenever I think about that, I always think of Paulo Costa against Adesanya. Like he had this like really weird like performance where well, surely just do what you're best at, mate. You know, and it was kind of the same there with Cap. He just didn't really. It was like, oh, this is really exciting. Like Manel Cap, like this guy's pretty good, and Pantoja's like top 5 guy. This is going to be potential. Like this could be brilliant, and it just never lived up. But you know, he'll be back, Manel Cap. You know, I'm kind of decided we're going to take a break for a little bit, and you know, maybe we'll get back together later on this year.
I think he's gonna be a threat in that division. I'd love to see Kyoji Horiguchi come back to the UFC at some point as well, because dude, I think the Gooch dominates everyone, and including Demetrius Johnson. Like if Demetrius Johnson came back now and fought in the UFC alongside someone like Kyoji Horiguchi, who's on the roll that he is, man, I think he's a champion for years to come.
Yeah, I'm definitely think that Manel Cap salty about the Demetrius Johnson thing, so I don't want to talk about it too much. But go on, George. Sorry, man.
Yeah, so I just think with Manel Cap, it's going to be one of these things where he's going to probably take a couple of losses here, but once he finds his feet in the UFC, he might start to make a play at this. But it wasn't the best performance, but I don't think it's something to be massively concerned about, to be honest, going forwards for him.
No, completely. And that kind of, I know he's done a lot of things in other promotions, but the bright lights of the UFC and the bright lights of that main stage, they're going to blind some people, and especially when a fight and a fighter are hyped up so much, sometimes it doesn't always live up to expectations. When Israel Adesanya fought against Yoel Romero, everyone was like, wow, these two guys are going to throw hands. This is going to be a fight of the night contention. And then all of a sudden, it was just the two of them standing and looking like someone had broken their PlayStation 2 controller. Like, they just didn't know what to do with themselves. They were on autopilot. So sometimes when people go in with that much hype and a specific fight itself has so much hype, from a fan point of view, you're looking at it thinking, right, this has to be the absolute banger that I want it to be. But then it doesn't always transpire that way. But Joe, what have you got next for Pantoja? Obviously, we're talking about Manel Kape here, but what have you got next for Pantoja in that division?
Maybe Alex Perez. I think Alex Perez would be a good fight. I feel like them two are, because Askarov and Joseph Benavidez are already fighting. I feel like Pantoja could be close to a title shot if he's obviously coming off 2 wins, obviously to match Snell and now Manel Kape. I feel like Alex Perez is a lot better than what we saw against Figueiredo. As we've seen him stop Jose Omega, which is something Brandon Moreno wasn't able to do after. So I feel like that would be a good fight, and then the winner of that will fight the winner of Askarov versus Benavidez for a title shot if they don't want to give Askar a title shot if he does win. And with Kape, I feel like I agree that a loss isn't that damaging. I'm just very glad that they started to reinvest in this flyweight division again. Now you've got so much talent. We've got more than just 12 fighters in the division, which is great. They've got around about 26, and that's constantly building now. And if you look at the talent they've got so much great talent. So that's why I don't think Kape will be in the rankings right now. But I feel like a one fight will get him into that rankings. Who could he fight? Maybe Azalgas. I know he's coming off 0-2, but he's still going to be a tough fight for anybody. I think Amir Albazi is just that good. We saw Zalgas gave Paiva a very tough fight. I mean, you could give him Paiva versus Manel Kape next if you want to jump him straight into the rankings. But I don't think it's that damaging. I do think he struggled under the light at the time. But you can't deny that he's got wins over Ian McCall and Kaya Sakura, which are very good wins. So I think he's going to be a very good prospect to watch out for, and it's not too much of a bad loss.
No, absolutely.
I'm just a quick one. I'm just looking at the flyweight rankings right now, and number 15, who I think would be a really good fight for Manel Kape, would be Tyson Nam. I think that would kind of allow him to kind of see both of their styles against each other, and it wouldn't be kind of a grinding fight. I think they would be able to kind of pick their shots a little bit better. So I think Tyson Nam would be fantastic for that.
Yeah.
I tell you what, boy, the run starts now. The run starts now.
All right, keep telling yourself that, mate.
It ain't happening.
But it was a strange kind of lineup yesterday. Obviously, on the main card, we had a few fighters that were just getting into their careers and obviously just coming into the UFC and stuff like that. And then we had the next fight up from that was obviously Clay Guido versus Michael Johnson. And these guys have been in the UFC for a very, very long time. And I just want to point out that Clay Guido clearly watched the previous podcast that we did talking about how he should tie his hair up a bit better. Unfortunately, it did actually come out towards the middle of the fight, but shout out to Sugar C. We all predicted that he should tie his hair up and he would have a better performance. And he did. He went out there. These guys threw absolute hands. Obviously, people were all posting about Michael Johnson's record after he beat Dustin Poirier all them years ago. And he just seems to be taking loss after loss after loss. And he's become he's become a journeyman in the division as well. And he's not even a gatekeeper, because a gatekeeper is obviously trying to protect people getting through the gate. Whereas he just kind of is willing to take all of them L's for everyone, really. But Prath, what did you have in that fight? It was a very exciting fight for some guys that are a little bit further along in their careers.
Kind of reminded me of Matt Brown versus Carlos Condit. Was it 2 weeks ago? Two veterans, two beloved veterans as well. Like, I think people really, really root for these guys to do well. I think Michael Johnson's had some of those key wins. Tony Ferguson, and I think he also had and then he beat Dustin Poirier as well. So he's always one of those guys. I think you say he isn't a gatekeeper. I think he was a gatekeeper, and now because so many people beat him, that now he's just kind of become a journeyman because of that, man, which is sad. Don't like to see a guy having a 19-17 record, man. I think that really kind of speaks volumes as to what, you know, I think once you lose like 2, 3, 4 in a row, it really should be questioning what he's doing in his fight career. And not to say that he should retire. I don't think I have the right to tell anyone that they should retire. I think it really depends that he should really be looking at what he's making wrong. What are these mistakes that he keeps making over and over again? I think he's just allowing a lot of these guys to take the fight away from him, to grind him out, to not allow him to implement his game. I think he's a very patient fighter. And I think when you have someone like Clay, who's very, very energetic and is constantly going forward, constantly pushing you up against the cage, it's very difficult for a Michael Johnson's to be stationary and pick his shots. And I think he does have great shot selection, and he's put Dustin Poirier down. He's put Tony Ferguson down. So it's not like he doesn't have the capabilities to get these guys out of here. I think he's being just a little bit too patient, but just allowing these guys to take the fight away from them as well. I think he's one of those guys as well. He gets to the third round, he's like, okay, now I'm going to put everything into this. And that often doesn't work out. I think Chael Sonnen said you either win by knockout or lose by decision. And I think he was trying to look for that knockout and then ultimately lost his decision. Clay, and look, turning back the clock, man, 39 years old, Clay Guido, an absolute animal, man. Like, I just love his style. He's been one of those guys over the years. You know, you have people that sometimes are a little bit boring in their approach to the wrestling side of things. I think Clay Guida's been one of those guys over the years that's managed to keep that quite fresh and to make it quite entertaining as well. Even when he's on the ground, he's scrappy, he's moving, he's trying to transition. He's not just settling in one place like a lot of these guys are. So, man, like, I agree, Clay. You do deserve someone on the rise. You do deserve to see, you know, like, you look at someone like Diego Sanchez, you say, okay, you don't need to see him against Michel Pereira. You don't need to see Diego Sanchez versus Conor McGregor. But I kind of want to see Clay Guida fight an up and coming, not someone that's, you know, not a Jim Miller, not a Michael Johnson, who's at the later stages of their career. Let's see how he does against one of these guys. You know, he's been consistent against these older generation guys. And I think it is smart matchmaking to put him up against those other guys. Like, I'm really grateful Carlos Condit was fighting Matt Brown and not fighting like George Masvidal. Like that, he would have got destroyed by George Masvidal, I feel. Well, maybe, who knows? So yeah, I feel like that's my point.
Yeah, no, I get you, man.
Somewhere there.
It's a slippery slope as well, you know, because as fight fans, we want to see these guys face the best, you know, and Clay Guido wants to fight the best. But then if you put him up against a top 5, 6, 7 in that division, is it just going to be feeding him to the lions, you know?
I mean, you don't need to give him someone in the top 5. You don't need to give him a Conor McGregor or a Dos Anjos or a Hooker. Like, I'm looking right now, and the person who's sitting at the number 15th rank is Gregor Gillespie, who hasn't been seen since the Kevin Lee fight. I think that may be a good fight for him to come back in. 2 wrestlers as well, so we'll negate that and potentially have a stand-up fight there. I think it'd be a good way for Gregor to get back on track if he can beat someone like Guida, and it gives Guida the opportunity to see how he does test himself against an elite athlete. And I think Gregor Gillespie, outside of that Kevin Lee loss, is utterly dominant. So let's see him. Let's give him the chance. Dana, let's do it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. George, what did you think about the fight?
It's like that. Just constant money. Just like that all the time, isn't he? Just like, he just never stops. I love Clay Guida, man. He's just with that crazy hair and just constantly moving, and you know, he got the job done, and that's what he's got to do at his age. You know, new 4-fight contract. Got in there, got the job done, and yeah, Johnson. I fear for Johnson that he could get cut now. This could be the end of the road in the UFC for Johnson. But Clay Guido was great. Fully deserved the victory. It was kind of, I thought it could be even going into that third, but then Guido just took it all away from him in that third round. Just left no doubt. Just kind of, got him on the floor and kept him there for like pretty much the whole round. But I saw someone, I can't remember who it was now, but I kind of saw a suggestion about, remember Jordan Levitt, who had that crazy knockout where he slammed the geezer on the floor?
And then he did the splits,
Yeah, he'd be perfect. He should fight Clay Guido next. If he wants an up-and-comer who's got a bit of hype about him and he wants to try and fight like that, then Jordan Levitt, why not? I think he's lightweight, isn't he? He is lightweight, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So. But yeah, Clay Guido. He'll be out there lakes now. No, it was great, man. I love those fights. Like Prath was saying, you stick two old boys in there, and they're just gonna slug it out for 15 minutes. It's great. We saw it with Condit Brown. We saw it last night. We'll see it probably in with Cowboy and Sanchez. They'll give it a good old scrap. And I'm quite into those. They're all right for me. But yeah, no, I thought Guido was great.
But you say old boys. I think Johnson is 34.
Yeah, well, he's an old boy, but he comes across like an old boy, doesn't he? Now, and that sounds ridiculous for me, who looks like he's 50, to say that 34 is old. But the bottom line is he's had 19 and 17.
Yeah, I think it must be very difficult to have that kind of record.
I don't want to be horrible, and like you say, he's had some good wins. He's fought like some big guys, but he'd do well just to walk away now. I'm being genuinely, he'd do well just to walk away and say, do you know what? I've had a good time, I've had a good run, but this is it for me.
Michael Johnson was the original Khabib killer. When Khabib got booked against him in New York, they thought that Michael Johnson was the guy that was going to take him out and stop the hype train. And just to see where he is now, it's actually so
sad.
Depressing.
It's sad.
Depressing, man. Yeah,
it's probably sad. It's not
and
nice.
Loads of damage as well. That's the other thing.
A lot of damage over the years, definitely. Yeah. So obviously, Prath is going for Clay Guido versus Gillespie next. But Joe, where do you have him going from here?
I know this seems really bad, but obviously these two fighters weren't. I'm fairly new to the sport. I've only been watching it for the last year or so, and so I've missed out on these two careers. So it's kind of I don't really share the same kind of sentiment the rest of you might have compared to what I do with them. So I realized how good Johnson was. I wasn't too sure about Clay Guido. I'm not too sure about his kind of styles, but the fact that he's still doing very well and he's still getting his wins is very good. And yeah, I also saw the Jordan Levitt potential match, and that would be good. They're both of the styles clash. They're both very good characters. I've heard someone also say Yo Alvarez, which not many people mention. He's a good young up-and-comer who beat Joe Duffy. So I think there's definitely there's enough prospects in this division for him to fight if he wants to fight them around the top 30. I don't think you should give him a top 25 yet, because I just feel like he's had over 50 fights now, and I thought that's a lot of damage. So I feel like you should fight somebody around the top 30, maybe a guy a wrestler that's not going to cause too much damage to you. Just try and, I know getting choked out is still very bad, but it's not as bad as getting concussive damage. So Levitt or Yo Alvarez, I think, could be next for him. And for Johnson, I think we're at a point where maybe he should go from the UFC, and but he's very lucky now, because leaving the UFC is not too bad now, because you got PFL, you got ONE, you got Bellator. He's got so many options. The only problem is that record of 19 and 17, because you're thinking, well, how are you going to market this guy? You can't go, well, this guy beat Poirier and Ferguson. That was years ago now. I know that's still big wins, but it doesn't really matter, really. And but I do think he'll find his home quite quickly if he does leave, or he could contemplate retirement. He has made a lot of money. He's been in great fights, and I just don't see where he can carry this on, really. I feel like once you're in the spiral of confidence, it's very hard for you to come back from. So I'm not too sure what you're going to do with him, but I think I don't know.
Yeah, and like you say, go on, George.
Sorry. People like a lot of people say that Michael Johnson's quite articulate and he's very intelligent. Maybe Michael Johnson, like, he walks away from this and heads into commentary or analysis of, something like that. That might be somewhere he goes. Everyone that you hear speak about him says he's a really articulate and nice bloke. Maybe that's where he goes. He thinks, what, I've had a great career, sweet, happy days. I'll stick around in the sport, but in a different setup, in a different scenario, possibly.
And obviously, what we saw on Friday as well in the bare knuckle boxing. Obviously, I'm not a massive fan of bare knuckle boxing personally. I think it's a bit too brutal. It's funny for the first couple of fights that you watch, but then deeper down the line, most of these men and women that are fighting in the BKB are kind of 3-1, and then they kind of retire because there's only so much damage you can take with a bare knuckle to the head. And maybe Johnson goes to the BKB for 2 fights, gets 400k per fight like Paige Van Zandt was getting on Friday, and then just disappears.
Why not, mate? Why not?
And I think it also leads to these fighters making smart investments when they're younger as well. Obviously, Conor McGregor is a perfect example of making smart investments with the money that he was making in his early fights, and how he promoted himself and how he changed the sport and made it lent it in his favor to be able to make a lot of money through not fighting, as well as being able to make a lot of money in fighting as well. I think a lot of fighters need to take this on board and, do the social media stuff and make a lot of money out of that kind of stuff and invest in products, invest in yourself as well. So many of these fighters coming through, they just seem like they're not making any investments with the money they're making. Obviously, not all fighters are in the public eye as much as Conor McGregor is, but, some of these guys can really make a lot of money off of the money they are making from fighting. Definitely.
Michael Johnson ain't getting that Paige Van Zandt money. I don't care what you say. He ain't getting that Paige Van Zandt money.
Paige Van Zandt's got more attractive
FU money.
Johnson.
Marketable, mate.
That's it.
Like Manel Cape, right?
Manel Cape with his beautiful skin.
Manel Cape and BKFC, mate. They're paying him a million. That's how pretty. That's how pretty he is.
But no,
it's not just on the bare knuckle thing though. That is all in or bust for them. Paige Van Zandt was the all in or bust, and her losing means they're bust. That. I bet you £5 that BKFC don't exist in 2 years' time. It's what is it like? It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
just seems like they're just taking so much damage, and it's just like there's no way of avoiding the cuts on the face. I think you look at the other female fight at BKFC that wasn't the Paige Van Zandt fight. Their faces were destroyed afterwards, and I just don't think it leads to career longevity. Maybe, as you say, make a quick buck, get out of there. I definitely don't want to see Michael Johnson go into any BKFC fight with a 19-17 record. No, thank you. Please retire or go. Do you know what? He would be a great coach. Look, he's learned a lot of lessons over the years. Having a 19-17 record, I don't see why he wouldn't be a great coach, because he's had so many lessons to learn from over the years. So who knows where Michael Johnson goes, man, but I'll be curious to see.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, like we say, there was a few barn burners on the whole fight card, a lot of decisions as well. But then that took us up to the co-main and the main, which obviously woke everyone up. I mean, I was working last night, so fortunately I was awake anyway, but I was literally bouncing around in my seat. I put a little wager on before the fight actually started of Corey Sandhagen to get it done inside the distance. And the first 23 seconds, I was a little bit nervous because Frankie was coming out. He was putting a lot of pressure on as well, very low stance, bouncing around. He looked really good. And then all of a sudden, the tide completely turned. Corey Sandhagen with already the KO of the year contention. I think that when we do our 2021 recap at the end of the year, this is definitely going to be up there. We've had some fantastic fights so far this year. We've got loads more to come over the next coming months as well. But that knockout was completely stone cold. The way he jumped, it was perfect positioning, perfect timing. And then, obviously you got a feel for Frankie Edgar, the way he fell. And obviously he was out for quite a long time after the fight. But it was absolutely beautiful from Sandhagen. And in his post-fight as well, he said, I'm really sorry, but if I didn't do it to him, he would have done it to me. Which is, you have to have that fighter mentality. George, obviously this woke you up at this time, man. So, what did you think of Corey Sandhagen's performance? I think he only threw one shot, and that was the KO finish.
Yeah, like obviously he had that fight that win over Marlon Moraes as well, with that kind of another kind of beautiful finish. Like I've been thinking about it today, and he could be like, the way he fights it's so beautiful. It's like painting a picture when he fights. It's so fluid and God, it's almost like perfection when you watch it, and that finish. But at the same time, the violent nature of him is something to behold. He doesn't come across like a particularly violent bloke, but man, that finish last night was violence personified. And the way Frankie Edgar fell was, man, it was nasty, to be honest. I kind of liked Sandhagen afterwards when he's like you just said, like he kind of said, look, I don't want to watch it back because I don't want to see it, but I've just got to do it because it's my job. But no, Sandhagen is, for me, I said it to you guys this morning, for me he's one of the scariest guys in the UFC. I think he's the best bantamweight alive at the moment. I think he's better than Jan, and I think he's better than Sterling, and I think it's not long before the belt is wrapped around his waist, to be honest. I think he's definitely the title next, 100%. There's no question. If they book it against TJ Dillashaw, I am going to lose my mind. I'm pre-warning everybody. I'm going to go mental if they book it against that drug cheat. So, Corey Sandhagen next for the title. It was brilliant last night. Where Frankie Edgar goes from here, I'm not sure. Maybe it's time to walk away. Maybe. I doubt he will. I would have thought he'll carry on going. But the level of brutality that knee had, oh man, it was. You looked at him once you sat down afterwards and went, "Oh my God, that's crazy." You're like, "Oh man, that's not good for Frankie Edgar, man." But yeah, no, Corey Sandhagen was unbelievable. He's like I said about Dariush, he's like water. He's so fluid. It's unbelievable. And he is, for me, one of the scariest guys in any division. He's top class. He really is.
No, completely, man. Completely. And you do not get paid overtime in these professions. He was in there for 28 seconds, I believe it was. The money per second is going to be astronomical, and it's going to do amazing for his life and his career as well. Prath, what did you think? Obviously, we were all talking to each other this morning in our little group chat, but it was just crazy. I think the whole of social media just had a little meltdown as well of what had just happened and what everyone just witnessed. Obviously, there was a lot of tears on the Frankie fan base, but then a lot of the hype train for Sandhagen was very, very real.
And I was crying for Frankie, man. I said to you guys before we did when we were doing our breakdown, one of the first cards I watched, a UFC card, was UFC 112, which was BJ Penn versus Frankie Edgar. And so I've been following Frankie for years and years and years and years. And to see him get put out like that was scary, more so than anything else. Not that it was a brutal knockout. I think the fact that Corey was kind of baiting him into something like that, you could see from the kind of bell, like when I rewatched the 28 seconds before it went down, you could see that he was about to bait him into something, but I couldn't tell what it was. And then he threw the flying knee, and oh my goodness. The second fastest KO via flying knee in UFC outside of the George Masvidal 5-second knockout. And coming off of the spinning wheel kick knockout that he did on Marlon Moraes as well. He is another one of those gentlemen that is going to be in that very, very top of the bantamweight division. I got to agree with George and say that if they give TJ the title shot at this point, it will be asinine. I was actually thinking about this the other day. I actually wouldn't mind seeing TJ Dillashaw versus Dominic Cruz too, seeing as they're both outside of their kind of like the height of what they are and their personas, and I would love to see that fight. Corey definitely is advancing to a title shot. I would love to see him rematch Sterling, because I think Sterling went into that night in Vegas with a point to prove, and he absolutely sliced through Corey Sandhagen. And this is another point we made, was that Corey didn't show up to that fight to lose. He showed up thinking he's going to take this, and I think Aljo just kind of steamrolled him and didn't really give him a chance, kind of like how Michael Chandler came in on his debut and steamrolled Dan Hooker. Like, he just didn't give Dan Hooker a chance to do anything. And so it'll be interesting to see that. Very interesting for George to say that Peter Yan isn't the guy, and it looks like Corey Sandhagen is going to be the guy in the division. Very interesting take, because I think Peter Yan is someone that is going to be at the very, very top, like we see with those top three guys in the division. It's going to be Aljo, it's going to be Peter Yan, it's going to be Corey Sandhagen.
I'm not saying that Peter Yan isn't like a top class at all, but I actually, when we get round to it, I will be picking Sterling to beat Yan in that title fight. So I'm not like, I think he's incredibly good, but there's something about Corey Sandhagen. He looks completely ready. And by the way, if TJ Dillashaw wants a big fight, then let him fight Sandhagen, and then Sandhagen can knock him out, and then we can just move on from that rubbish. The only other thing I wanted to say quickly was a little bit of a joke. Did you see when he was before the fight and he was walking up and down the cage? Did it not look like he was like it was in fast forward? He was pacing, wasn't he? He was going well quick as he was waiting for that fight to start. But anyway, he's so good, man. He's so good. He might be my new favorite fighter at the moment. He's so good.
And one of the other things I think,
the only person to come in potentially is that little Nurmagomedov bloke. I reckon he could be a bit of a problem in a year or two, but we'll see.
I think the thing that put Corey over for the fans yesterday was the amount of respect he gave to Frankie after the fight. And I agree. And I think that really shows a lot about his character as well, that you can understand what you need to do in a fight, but to also respect someone who came before him and really paved the way for these lighter weight guys and the smaller guy in general to go out and really showcase themselves and not be defined by the size of who they are, but the size of the fight that they bring. So, man, all respect to Corey Sandhagen. Those are the actions that will make him a fan favorite. On top of the fact that he's throwing spinning hook kick knockouts, on top of the fact that he's throwing flying knee knockouts, the people that end up, I think that's another reason why people give Conor so much love, is because when he's respectful of a fighter, it's like, oh my God, like, it's so revered that Conor is like sitting there and breaking down why he likes this person. And to see Corey do that, massive respect. I think he's going to be a fan favorite. I think he's going to be a pay-per-view star. I think he is a little bit of an introverted gentleman. And I think over time now, taking these main event fights will allow him to unlock a little bit more of his character and allow him to really be seen by the people. So let's see what goes on here next. But man, I'm extra excited for Yan versus Sterling. Let's go, guys. I want to see this fight next week, and then we'll book Corey Sandhagen on afterwards.
Just the last thing really quickly is what they're doing at Elevation Fight Team in Colorado is amazing.
Yeah.
Simple as that. They're doing amazing work there.
100%. And you know what? You obviously said it was the second fastest flying knee knockout, but I think it was the only ever flying knee walk-off knockout. Obviously, Jorge followed up with shots, whereas this was a crisp hit with the knee, and then he didn't bother. He just walked off, and he knew it was done.
It was like watching Roy Nelson not Roy Nelson. It was like watching Mark Hunt uppercut someone and walk off. And the actual, like, the way he walked off was finessed and just like, wow.
Yeah, man, for sure.
Yeah, it's huge for the division as well. But Joe, what do you have in the division? Obviously, there's a couple of matches up over the next coming months and weeks and stuff. Obviously, with Aljo fighting Peter Yan. But who else do you see matching up in the division? Obviously, the return of TJ. What other fights would you love to see in that division?
This division is just so good right now. He could do Rob Font versus Aldo. I think that would be a good fight. Rob Font's obviously win over Marlon Moraes, and I just feel like he deserves that now. He's been around for a while. Rob Font, he's into the top 5 now. He shouldn't be fighting anybody lower. I'm a big Peter Yan guy. I feel like a lot of people, like especially on social media, they had this thing that apparently Yan's just fought bums and bad competition, and that's just not the case. If you look at his, I know regional scene, people have this think, oh, it doesn't matter what you do outside the UFC, what in the UFC matters. But in his second fight, he beat a guy who was 19-7, and then he fought and beat him at 1-0. He then gone on to beat Magomedov, who's a very, very good bantamweight who fights at Bellator now. And then he's beating guys like Matos, who also fought Magomedov in Bellator, and that was his only loss at the time, was to Peter Yan. So I think he's fought very good opposition. And I think he would beat Sterling. I think I have him to beat Sterling in that division. But also moving forward, I think that Umar Nurmagomedov is a very big name in that division, and what he did to Sergey Mosov was very impressive, because Mosov is a guy who will get a lot of wins in that division as well. So I just feel like it's a lot like the lightweight division, the bantamweight, where you got the top 15 to 30 guys. Any of those guys in that top 30 could beat maybe like the lower top 15 guys in that division. So you got Barcelos in there who's fighting a Sun Tzu. No, he's not. He was meant to fight a Sun Tzu or Sun Tzu. You could do Barcelos versus Stamen. I think they were meant to fight last year. So I think that would be good. That would be a good fight. I think this division is one of the best divisions in the UFC right now, with the featherweight and lightweight division. And I've always been a bigger fan of these lighter divisions. To be honest, I don't really like the heavyweight division at all, apart from a couple of fighters. And that's why I cared about the main event, but I didn't at the same time, because I just felt unattached, because, like I said, I'm fairly new to the sport. So everyone who has these sentiments, obviously, about Edgar and Overeem, I know these guys are legends, and I do feel bad for them, but it's like kind of like I don't have that attachment as what some of you on this podcast might have and some other fans might have. So I'm normally like a kind of like a younger guy versus a veteran. I always want the younger guy to win, just because I feel like this sport needs to build up stars. And I feel like when people celebrate a star losing, I feel like that's not really good. But I kind of gone on a bit of a rant there. But I think this division is very good, and I'm looking forward to see what happens next.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. As you say, the lightweight division, the 145ers, 135ers, just every division. We've said this so many times on this show, you know, every division is it just seems to get more and more stacked as the weeks, the months go by. There's just more fighters coming through and breaking from that kind of top 15 to 25. They're breaking into the top 15. And then these guys that have been there for a little while are getting cut and getting cut and getting cut. And obviously not having the bigger fights as we've seen. But yeah, absolutely, man. And obviously you said about Stamen, obviously he was supposed to fight yesterday against Askar, but obviously that fight was pulled because someone had an injury, I believe, or didn't pass their medical suspension, didn't pass the medical pre-fight. Did you see?
Yeah, Askar. Yeah,
Askar squared, right?
Askar squared. Yeah,
Askar squared. Yeah, he didn't make it through.
I don't think there was any news really as to what happened with him, though, was it?
I think it was just he didn't pass his medical pre-fight. Maybe he had, you know, most of these guys get some sort of infection when they're cutting weight, especially cutting down to the smaller weights as well. You obviously get. Say again.
I'm saying can't catch a break though, can he? He can't get a fight for nothing at the moment. You know, man, it's so unfortunate for him. What's it now, like four fights that have just fallen off? Is it?
Yeah, I think around that mark, and it's just such a shame for these guys that want to be up and coming and want to really make a name for themselves. And then the guy that they pitched up with, obviously these two guys Askar squared is a very good, prominent fighter, and he's going to be very big in the future. But Stamen as well wants to make a name for himself and make more of a name for himself in this division. It's just such a shame when fights get pulled, especially at short notice. You know, they're going into these fights having a 10, 12 fight camp, and for it to get pulled on the day or even the day before, you think you've just put so much of your life and soul into training for this person, and it's just such a shame when it doesn't pull through. But then that leads us on to the main event of the evening. Obviously, we were all rooting for the hometown hero, Alistair Overeem, obviously being from West London. And I will reiterate, Alistair Overeem is from West London. He was born in Hounslow, so he is not Dutch. I'll just make it very, very clear. it was a shell of Overeem, really. You know, Joe was saying about not being emotionally invested in some of these veterans and stuff, but as we said on the pre-fight, and it's been very well documented over the past couple of days as well, that Alistair Overeem has fought in 4 different decades, and he's won fights in 4 different decades. So he appeals to the younger fighters and the younger women. Apparently, if you listen to social media with him flying into DMs, but he appeals to the younger fighters, and he appeals to the kind of veterans as well of the MMA sport and the fans and the hardcore fans. But it was a real shame, I thought, for him to take the loss, and the way he did as well. Obviously, being on his hands and knees, taking a big left hook from Volkov. Won't take anything away from Volkov. He went out there, kept his distance, was really breaking through the guard as well of Alistair Overeem, pieced him apart. He didn't need to engage. He didn't need to take any damage. He said after the fight that he was very, very happy and very excited about his future, but that didn't come across in his visuals at all. He didn't look like he was very happy to have won the fight even.
He is Russian.
It's true. It reminded me of the Jericho fight a couple of weeks ago when he was just almost very upset that he'd won, which was very strange to see from a fighter with such a good future ahead of him. I'm not a huge fan of these heavyweight guys outside of the top 4 or 5. Obviously, there's a couple of people, and obviously John Jones coming into the heavyweight division. I will be very excited for that and how he changes it up. But it was a sad night for Alistair Overeem to go out the way he did. But Prath, you obviously had a bit of an emotional attachment to Overeem as well, being a West London guy yourself. What do you think he did wrong in that fight, and how could he have implemented his game plan if he did have one? It didn't look like he did for me.
I got to agree. I don't feel like he had much of a plan going in. And I thought that for me would have been one of the places where he would have really shined. Was one of the things that I said in the pre-fight breakdown was that, Volkov is very tall. So obviously he wants to keep it very rangy. And I felt with the experience in kickboxing that Alistair Overeem has, that he would be able to just kind of figure out a way of getting in there. And Alex pieced him up, man. There's nothing else you can really say apart from that. Ended the first round, he did look very, very hurt. And coming into that second round, I just feel like he was kind of like lamb to the slaughter almost a little bit coming out for that second round, because I just felt like Alex really didn't have any problems with anything, like the distance or anything. Alistair didn't give him anything. And to see him take that was it left hand or left, it kind of looked like a left elbow actually. When I first saw it, I thought it was like a left elbow, but it was the left hand that put him down. Mm-hmm. And and he kind of like spiraled on the floor. I don't know if you saw it. As the fight got stopped, he was on his hands and knees first. I think he took the shot, kind of went to his side, went to his hands and knees, and then kind of spiraled Brock Lesnar, Heath Herring kind of style, like out of the way. And man, it's just tough to watch our hometown boy get pieced up like that, man. 40 years old, definitely later end of his career. And Alex Volkov looks like someone that is on the rise as well. And I think, as much as we talk about the loss that Alistair Overeem has taken, Alex Volkov has really, really tried his best to really elevate himself. And you see a better version of Alex Volkov every single time he fights. I don't know if it was the back tattoo or anything that really gave him the power there, but he came out like a demon this time around. And there have been fights where he really doesn't. Like if you look at the Derek Lewis fight, where he was piecing him up and really giving him trouble throughout the entire fight, but didn't really look like he cared about putting him away. And that's kind of what I felt like. But obviously Alistair just couldn't take the shots that Alex was giving him. So a great performance from Alex, man. Wow. He is really going to be moving on, and I'm excited to see him against these other top guys, using that range a little bit better. I think he's kind of like the person we all wanted Stefan Struve to end up being, in the sense that he actually kind of does use his range for the most part. So I'm really interested. I really love those really, really tall guys when they can really use their reach. Like you look at Izzy. Izzy uses his reach so good. Really is able to fight from the outside, throw a lot of kicks. You don't see a lot of these really tall guys throw a lot of kicks, which is really interesting to me because I think that they could cover they've got a really broad range of space that they can hit with. So that's something I would love to see for those guys. But, this for me, when I looked at this main event, it's an exciting fight, but for me, it doesn't really super progress the division too much. We're looking at Stipe and Francis for the title coming up. Not many other fights outside of that really interest me from a Stipe perspective. I don't think Stipe versus Alex Volkov will be a barn banner. I actually don't even think like Stipe versus Derek Lewis is a barn burner. I think Stipe just takes him down and finesses him really. So where he is in the division and where he is after this fight is a little bit unclear to me. I assume he'll maybe go up 1 notch or 2 notches on the rankings. But just wow, great performance. Sad to watch Alistair go out like that, kind of like Frankie. A legend of the sport, a pioneer, both of them pioneers of the sport, really. To see him take that shot and get put down like that was tough to watch. But that's the natural progression of MMA. So look at someone, let's celebrate Alex Volkov instead of kind of looking at the downsides of Alistair Overeem.
Yes, no, completely, man, completely. Joe, what did you see? Obviously, like I say, Overeem's been in the game for a very, very long time. Obviously, probably before you were born, he was fighting at a very world-class level. So, what did you see from his performance? And are you going to, being new into the sport as well, definitely go back and have a look at the early Alistair Overeem fights when he was fighting in K1 and like the Pride days and stuff as well. Go and have a look.
Right.
Absolute monster back in the day. But what did you see from Volkov's performance?
I thought Volkov looked really good. I feel like MMA is just so weird right now because I feel like I watched the Volkov versus Greg Hardy fight and I was like, Volkov didn't really look that impressive. And then you see him against Overeem and you think it's a completely different fighter. Whether that's because Overeem shelled up a lot more and he didn't really have to face that much. He was able to tee off at him. And it's still, obviously, I still think it's sad seeing like a guy who's at the top of his game. I know he's Strikeforce champion, and then it's not like nice seeing people go out like that. Obviously, you want somebody to go out if that is going to be their last fight or whatever on a win or a bit of a better note. I'm not really too sure what you're going to do with Overeem right now. I think there's still a lot of winnable fights because, this is a guy literally 2 fights ago that dominated Jairzinho Rozenstruik for 24 minutes. So it's hard to tell whether he's completely finished or whether it's just the fact that Volkov on that night was too good. And I do agree with the fact that there is a lot of instinct of somebody looking bad rather than crediting the guy that won. Like you will see it all the time. You will see even in the Poirier McGregor fight. People go, "Oh yeah, but this didn't look like McGregor." Like not enough people are crediting the actual winners, and I just feel like it's not fair on the fighters who trained so hard, put in the work for how many years, and this was his big moment. This was like probably his biggest name he's beaten. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think the top 5 is so weird in the division right now because obviously you've got Game versus Rozenstruik happening, you've got Blades and Lewis happening, and you've got Stipe and Garno. So who do you have there in that top 5 for him to fight? There's nobody there in that area. So whether he waits out and just waits to the division to free up a bit, I'm not too sure. But I feel like Stipe's only got 2 or 3 fights in him. And obviously that's going to be the Ngannou fight right now. For John Jones, if he moves up to that heavyweight division. And I think he would be interested if Gain beats Rozenstruik. I think he would be interested in that because I just feel like that's a very good fight and they're very high-level strikers. And what people don't realise about Gain that he's a very good grappler himself. He's got submissions himself. So he's not just this striker kickboxer. And I think he could beat Stipe. And I think that those 3, maybe his last 3 fights, I think definitely he would do Ngannou and Jones, and he might retire there, or he might take on the Game fight. But I think Volkov should wait because there's no benefit of him fighting anyone be below him right now because anything can happen in that division. He could get sparked out. We've seen how quickly fights can change. So I do think he should wait for the top 5 to free up, maybe fight the winner of Gain versus Rozenstruik. because I think Blades will deserve a title shot. But again, whether has he got that pull to do that, to get a title shot? We've already seen Volkov Blades as well, so I'm not too sure what you're going to do with him at this right now.
Yeah, and obviously Volkov didn't take hardly any damage. I don't think he did any damage at all in the fight last night. But why not John Jones versus Volkov? Two very, very rangy fighters. Two guys that are very, very tall, very long, very good reach, good kicks, stuff like that. So, George, what do you think? John Jones versus Volkov? Because he's going to be in the top 5 anyway.
Yeah, for sure, man. I was a good shout. I did think about that this morning when I was messaging. Obviously, I said the winner potentially of Rosenstrike and Garn might be where Volkov goes next, because I presume what's going to happen is literally Overeem and Volkov are going to swap places in the rankings. Volkov will go to 5 and Reem will probably go to 6, I guess. But obviously, the Reem's dream is over. You know, he wanted the title shot and he isn't going to get the title shot. And I do think that will basically, I think, look, Overeem said that he's here for one final run and he's here to try and win the title. And if he doesn't win the title, then he's finished. Then I presume that he's probably going to look at maybe stopping now. You know, what is there left for him? He's got nothing left to prove to anybody. And he wants the title, which he's not going to get. He's going to have to fight, 4-5 times probably now to get back to a title shot. It's not happening. So, yeah, I think you'll probably see Overeem take a break and then decide to step away. But for Volkov, you know, like, it was great, like, fantastic for him last night. You know, it's a great win, like, over a legend of the sport. So, and he moves into the top 5 now. I did see Ngannou tweet like welcoming him to the top 5 and saying, yeah, well, basically good luck to you, mate. But yeah, for me, Jones is not a bad shout. If Jones is looking for that like kind of welcoming fight to see what he's like, but like I preview show, there's no way that Dana White's booking him against anybody other than the title holder for Jones. So maybe Rosenstrike and Garn is going to be where they go next, potentially. I don't know if he'll want to do Curtis Blades or Derek Lewis. I'm not sure that will go very well for Volkov, to be honest. He's fought them already and it didn't particularly end very well. So I'm guessing that he might want to avoid them. You know, he's kind of admitted himself that his performance against Blades was kind of the turning point. Maybe he might want the rematch at some point to try and prove it, you know, in a different way for him. But yeah, Volkov was great, and you know, deserving to be the number 5 ranked guy. You know, there's nobody else that I can think of who deserves to be sat where he is now. So, you know, great performance. But yeah, obviously, you know, as we all know, we all appreciate Overeem and what he's done for this sport, and you know, to see him kind of end like that is sad. But you know, that is the game. That is this game. You know, this game has very little happy endings, and you know, Overeem's just another one of those kind of guys who hasn't had the happy ending that he wanted.
No, absolutely. Prath, you were going to jump in there. What did you have, man?
I was just going to say that I do think Volkov does take that Derek Lewis fight, because if you remember, he was piecing Derek Lewis up until he got finished.
Right. Yeah, he might do. He might take Derek Lewis. I like Curtis Blades is going to beat Derek Lewis, so it might make sense to do Derek Lewis against Volkov like next. To be honest, because that might be where he goes.
Or the winner / loser of the Jairzinho against Garn fight.
Yeah.
I think that's the only other person that he can refight at this point.
Definitely, I agree.
Is that pushing Garn too quickly though? I think Garn is only like 8-0, isn't he, in the UFC?
Garn's ready.
They're chucking Garn in against number 3, man, Jairzinho. I think if he can beat Jairzinho, who is, I feel like Jairzinho has kind of become he's only been fighting in the UFC in like the last year or so. He's already kind of become the gatekeeper of the heavyweight division. The next person to really go up there and fight for the title beats Jairzinho. Francis Ngannou fought and beat Jairzinho. So I feel like if Garn can actually put him away, I think if it's a close fight and it's a decision, then we explore the Volkov angle. But I think if Garn goes out there and starches Jairzinho, then why not?
I think Garn, if he beats Jairzinho, is one fight away from the title shot.
But then who's that other fight?
Curtis Blades.
I think Curtis Blades as well is a nightmare for every single matchup in that division because of his style, man.
But you've got to get past. Sorry, carry on. Sorry.
No. I agree. You have to get past Curtis Blades. Him and Jairzinho are standing there at the gates to the heavyweight title, going, "You're not getting past us."
This is what I mean. So it's like Cyril Gane he's gonna have to, he's gonna have to go through a Curtis Blades or potentially a Francis Ngannou, to get himself to that title shot. He's gonna have no choice probably. So, get yourself. I think he'll beat Jairzinho in March, or in February. Sorry, it now is. But that last kind of one fight to kind of get yourself to the top of the chain is going to be a difficult one. But they clearly. He's highly rated, man. Like, he looks very good.
I think if he beats Blades as well, that really puts him over in the heavyweight landscape as well. If you look at who Curtis Blades has beaten, Overeem, Volkov, like having these wins, these grinding wins that are actually, I can imagine, are fairly demoralizing as well. Like you're taking a beating where you're literally not able to defend yourself because of what the other person's doing. So I think if he's able to put away Jairzinho and he's able to put away Curtis Blades, like skies, that he is going to easily become the heavyweight champion of the world. I'll just put it out there.
It's going to be interesting to see, though, if that was to all come to pass, though. Would Curtis Blades want to fight Cyril Gane? Because Cyril Gane is this really dangerous kind of guy that he doesn't want to go near, with him being so close to a title shot himself.
I just really fancy Cyril Gane.
Yeah, I do. You... Oh, no, I missed that. I just went, yeah, I do as well. He's my new crush. You can have him during the week, and I'll have him at the weekends.
Sharing is caring.
Instead of a carpool, you can have a gun pool.
I like that.
Oh,
we'll have to trademark that as well. Well,
if we can get Cyril on, that'd be nice, eh?
Say again.
If we can get Cyril and Manuel Cape will be the top tier guests that we can go on.
That's it. And talking of guests, obviously we had Norman Yoveni from Bellator on the show the other day as well. We have some fantastic guys coming up. We had Aaron Khalid on the show last week as well. We've got a few guys coming up this week. Some previous, UFC fighters. Obviously he's going to be on the show anyway. We'll talk about him and stuff like that. Who's not in the promotion anymore. Talk about his journey. And then we've got a couple of guys from Cage Warriors as well that we're going to be doing interviews with this week, which is actually going to be absolutely fantastic. And exactly the same as Joe did. If you ever want to come on the show or, you ever want to talk about MMA with us, we're more than happy to feature people, have people on. We are just three blokes that just talk about this in our kitchens, living rooms or outhouses, wherever George is, If anyone ever wants to come on the show, just hit us up like Joe did, and we're more than happy to have you on. If you want to listen to the show and you don't want to watch it on YouTube, you can listen to us on Spotify. We're trying to get on Apple Music, Amazon Podcasts, and check us out on Instagram at Fighting Talk 2. George looks after the Instagram. On Twitter at Fighting Talk 2 as well. I look after the Instagram myself. So you can hit us up on multiple platforms and every which way possible. So give us a follow, a like, subscribe, do all the usual stuff. Joe, how can people find you, man?
You can find me on Twitter at Joseph Andrew Shaw. I also do YouTube at Joseph Shaw as well, which I kind of do a similar thing with interviews. I've interviewed Mason Jones before. I've also interviewed Norbert Naveni before as well. I'm also trying to branch out of MMA as well. Also do MMA content, but I'm also trying to get interview some other sports people as well. But I've not really uploaded recently, but I am hoping to do more card previews and stuff in the future.
Beautiful, man. And you are always welcome on the show. Obviously, you've only been into MMA, like you say, for a year or so, a little bit over a year, but your knowledge is really, really good. And you can tell you're a big fan of the sport as well, man. So thank you very much for jumping on the show on behalf of all three of us. Thank you very much for jumping on.
Thank you for having me on again and giving me this chance to talk about MMA.
No worries at all, man. Like I say, we'll be posting some of the interviews and stuff throughout the week. and we'll be doing the pre-fight for UFC 258, I believe it is, next week. Usman versus Burns. We'll be doing a pre-fight for that, which is obviously going to be a huge card as well. I don't think the card itself is huge. The main event is huge, and obviously there's a few barn burners on the prelims and the main event as well. So, Prath, thank you very much for joining us as always. George, thank you very much as always. Joe, thank you very much for jumping on, man, and we will see everyone next time.